In this part of the free Blender in Blender course, we are going to make this animation. You'll learn how to easily make this scene using some clouds, some assets that we made before, and some camera animations as well. So let's get started straight away. So I've already brought in the Blender and the fruit from the previous render that we made, and it's actually quite simple what we have to do. So I'm going to start straight away. I'm going to press Shift A, add a plane, and it's going to place it right over there because that's where I've got my 3D cursor. Make sure it is sitting on this Blender. Scale it up all the way over here, make it quite big. And now I'm going to press Shift A, Image, Images as Planes, and I'm going to bring in a sky texture. I can scale this up right now, bring it all the way to the back. Press on 1, add the camera, bring it a little bit closer. So scale this plane upwards until it's stretched out all the way across over here. Bring this down, scale it upwards, and maybe place the sun right behind our Blender. We can open this up, take this, and plug it into the emission shader. Color into the emission, and increase the strength just a little bit so it gives off some light as well. I'm going to take this plane, make a new material, increase the metallic, decrease the roughness, and now it's going to be entirely reflective. Now the idea is that we can set the scene by placing some large fruits over here to show what you can use the Blender for, and it has this fruity experience. I'm going to add a noise texture right over here, Ctrl T, object into the vector. Plug the vector into a bump height right over here, normal into the normal. And it will be kind of blurred out because we have a scale that is too big. So I'm going to set this to 200 and we can see what it looks like by going over here, and it will create this type of water rippling effect. So let's plug this into the height of the bump, let's see what it looks like. And maybe it's a bit too strong. So we can decrease the strength by a whole bit, something like this. Bring in a color ramp and have it be a bit more randomized. By bringing in the whites and the blacks closer, and as you can see, it will make sure that we have some random areas right over here that look a bit different. I think that looks pretty cool. There's only 3 more things that we have to do. We have to make some clouds, we're going to distribute the fruit, and then we're going to animate the camera. So right over here, we've got our 3D cursor. I'm going to press Shift A, add a meta ball. It's right over here, meta ball, and add a ball. Duplicate it a whole bunch of times and make sure that it has this randomized shape of a cloud. Something like this. Do with this whatever you like. You can make your own shape, do something funny with it. Select all the meta balls right over here, right mouse click, convert to mesh. And now all of this is one object. So we've got a cloud right here. So now let's press Shift A, volume, empty. And we've got a volume right over here. You cannot see it in the viewport. Then we're going to the modifier stack, press generate, mesh to volume. And in the object, select our meta ball. Now you can't see anything, but as soon as you turn the meta ball off, we get some clouds. Now these are not the best looking clouds, so in order to improve this, we can go over here and set the voxel amount to 150, and that will already give it a bit more detail. But this is not all. We can also add a volume displace, which is right over here. We're going to add it, make a new texture, click on this little icon right here, and it will take us to the texture tab right over here. Set this to clouds and increase the size of this, or decrease the size of this. Make it a bit more interesting. Go over to the modifiers. We can increase the strength or decrease the strength. Let's go over here to the meta ball, select the meta ball first, then select the volume, and now you can move it around. Now this is not the most interesting looking cloud as of yet, so what we have to do is bring in an area lamp right over here, bring it upwards, increase the power by a whole bunch, make sure that we can get this cloud to be wide. But of course it's also shining on our other objects, which is not something that we like, but at least we can now see what it will look like. Go over to the texture tab and make sure that you have the scale and the size that you would like it to have. And now this is a beautiful looking cloud for our Blender to sit in. And one thing you may notice is that this cannot move around. So if you press G and you try to move it, it will not work. And the reason for it is that we have a meta ball right over here, which is determining its position. So basically if we select both of these, we can move it around. Now in this case, I'm going to bring it slightly towards this side to make sure that the Blender sits in the clouds perfectly. Now one thing that's kind of wrong is the fact that this area lamp is also shining on our kiwi. So I'm going to take this area lamp, right over here it is, and I'm going to the Object Properties tab, Shading, Light Linking, New, and then drag in this volume. And now it will only work on this volume. Now as you can see, the meta ball is obstructing it. But the light will at least not shine on the kiwi anymore, and we get some pretty nice looking clouds. I'm going to select the meta ball and the volume, and I'm going to press Shift D. And I find it quite annoying that I cannot move it around. So I'm going to select the meta ball first, then the volume, Ctrl P, Object, Keep Transform. And now when we select this volume, we can just move it around. All we have to do is open this up, go to the meta ball and hide it. So now we've got a cloud over here as well that we can move around freely. Now all we have to do is set up our camera, which we've got right over here. I think it's a bit too far. I'm going to move it upwards It's not entirely in the middle. So I'm going to press G and X, make sure that our blender is sitting in the middle. And now all we have to do is distribute some fruit in our scene. So I'm going to duplicate the strawberry, going to bring it all the way over here, maybe rotate it a little bit, scale this one up, rotate it to the other side and place it behind right over here. We can also take a kiwi, for example, duplicate it right over there, G and X, scale it upwards until we get some interesting looking fruity scenes. Basically the name of the game is to distribute this entirely in the scene. Then I will take this and I'm going to do something risky. I'm going to bring it all the way in front of the camera. Somewhere over here. And maybe we can have a little corner that goes like this to give this more depth in the scene. And now this already looks a bit more cinematic. Of course, you can also add other fruits that you've made. I am not going to make that for this tutorial because this is not a how to make fruit course. It's a Blender animation course, but the more fruit you add, the cooler it will probably look. And now we've got a pretty cool looking scene. We can also take some of these clouds, like this one, make sure that they have an interesting position for this as well. Then we can select this area lamp, duplicate it, bring it over here, and make sure that volume 1 is also in the light linking properties for this one. Now select this light and make sure that our cloud is white. Now we can do this a couple more times to give this idyllic vibe as if we are living in a fantasy land. And you can add some more of these if you'd like. I'm just going to leave it at this and I will animate the camera right now. So I'm going to select the camera right over here and let's see what happens if we bring this all the way to the front. This is actually quite nice, so I'm going to use this. I will go over to the timeline, press I, then go to frame 72, then go all the way over here. And now we can see it's not exactly in the middle. So that is a problem. So I'm going to press G and X, bring it into the middle, like so. Press I, delete this keyframe, GZZ, bring it backwards until we are all the way over here and then press I. So first we want it to go a little bit slow because people need to be immersed in this environment, and then we're going to zoom into the blender real quick and make a transition out of it. So I'm going into the graph editor, Control Tab, and I will open up this camera. Now this is of course the Y location. So I'm going to select the Y, close everything off except for the Y, select it, A, dot, and it's right over here. So first we want it to go slow. There's actually an interpolation mode that does this. So right mouse click, interpolation mode quadratic. However, the problem with this is that we lose our handles. So now we can't change anything with the speed of this animation. So I'm not going to use the quadratic interpolation. I'm just going to do it by eye. So I'm going to take this, bring it down, and we want it to be very fast near the end and quite slow near the beginning. So something like this should probably work out. So we're moving forward slowly and zooming into the blender. So let's see what it looks like. So I'm going to take this G and Z just a little bit. So now we've got an animation that looks like this, and it's going to zoom into the blender and we're going to transition it to another shot. So now all we have to do is turn on motion blur and render this out. So go over here, turn on motion blur, and now you can play around with the rest of the render settings, and I'll see you in the next video. As you can see, renders like this can be made quite easily. We use some images as planes, we use some assets that we made before, and we did some very simple animations. So if you want to become an undeniable force in the 3D space, then I highly recommend watching this video next.